Hello and welcome. This is Musicians in Isolation with Julia Chaplina, and I'm delighted to have the most wonderful guest, Joanna MacGregor, who is the head of keyboard at the Royal Academy of Music in London. And also Joanna is the music director of the Brighton Philharmonic Orchestra. Excited to talk to you, Joanna. How are you and how has it been for you this lockdown?
Well, it's great to see you. It's lovely to talk to you. It's very hot today. We're talking to each other on a very hot day.
Yes.
And yeah, of course, for everybody, it's been a really remarkable time. I wonder if any of us thought it would be going on this long, actually, when we were first told to grab our things and lock down. And I remember saying to my husband, you know, I think this could be 2 months. And he looked absolutely horrified. He couldn't believe it. Of course, obviously, it's going to go on for a lot longer than that.
Interesting. And has this been a positive experience in any way for you?
Yes. To be honest with you, like a lot of performers, I'm quite good at being on my own. I know this sounds like a contradiction, but I think a lot of performers are introverts, and they have very strong internal imaginations, and so they're quite good at solitude. And I know probably audience members assume we're all extroverts and we're all dying to get on stage, but that's really more to do with communicating how deeply we feel about the music and to show where we're up to, say, with a piece. And so for me and for a lot of musicians, I think we found this, despite the political worries, the financial problems, and this spectre lurking at us in the future. I mean, these are huge things, but the actual business of being alone and having time with your instrument and your craft and practice and being able to read books, and, you know, it's marvelous, really.
Which books are you reading at the moment?
Well, when we first locked down, I thought it was a great chance to read some very long books. So I immediately read Hilary Mantel's The Mirror and the Light, which is her trilogy, of course, the final one about Thomas Cromwell, 900 pages long. So I thought, okay, this is a good time for me to find the time for the 900-page book. I was a Booker Prize judge last year, so I knew all about the experience of reading. I think we read 150 books last year. And this one clearly is going to make it surely onto the long list, if not the short list, if not further. So I thought I must read this. So that took up a good couple of weeks at least. And also it's very historical, so you have to keep on looking up all these people. Who is the Earl of Surrey? Let me just remind myself. So that was great. And I've been reading a lot about Beethoven because, like a lot of people, I'm practicing a lot of Beethoven currently. I'm also going through a Wagner moment because, again, you know, got time. Let's just do it. I just emerged from a week with Parsifal. And I'm a sort of avaricious reader, and I love going online and looking for academic journals and articles and all kinds of things. So I like researching anyway around things that I'm working on.
Fantastic. And have you watched anything online, or has any music production caught your attention?
Well, I have to say operas, you know, I've really enjoyed watching a lot of opera online rather than concerts. I'm very aware, I mean, I'm sure we'll be talking about performers doing online performances at the moment, but I think we're terribly lucky. You know, I say to my students, there's just so much stuff now online for free that is of astonishing historic archival quality, and you know, enormously important that we all see. So it's a wonderful thing to be able to immerse ourselves in, you know, these larger scale things which sometimes you don't have time for, you feel like you don't have time for.
Sure.
I'm a bit of a fan, actually, as well, of Italian film. And funnily enough, I conceived a great yearning for Rome in this lockdown. I don't play a lot in Rome. I have played a few times, but it's not as though I go there all the time. But of all the cities in the world, Rome was the one that kept on coming to me in my dreams. It could have been Venice, could have been Paris, could have been all kinds of things. So I have been, you know, doing a lot of Italian film because, I mean, right from the 40s onwards, there are the most incredible Italian movies to be watching.
Well, it sounds you're having a wonderful time, and the lockdown is full of pleasures. But let's come back to exactly what you have just mentioned. online streaming, online performances. A lot of young people do that. What is your attitude towards that?
Well, I think currently a lot of performers of all kinds are very generously putting things on online, and they're doing it for lots of different reasons. So quite a few of my students have been doing some fundraising YouTube recitals, which is great. You know, it's a wonderful way for them to practice something, flex their muscles, play something online, and do some fundraising at the same time for the NHS or various charities they're interested in. I think other people have been talking online, you know, doing like little diary things, little blog things, little 5-minute things every day. This is clearly not the future. I mean, this is just what's going to happen for the time being. I think in the long term, people will want to be going back into buildings and playing, but at the moment, venues are shut, and we know the reasons for that. But at the moment, the venues are the issue for musicians. So we'll see. We'll see. And the piano, of course, we're not so good at playing out of doors. You know, if we played stringed instruments or guitars or brass instruments, we could all, you know, march outside and do some wonderful outdoor things. But it's difficult with the piano.
Do you think that younger people are going to go to the concert halls? Because now I noticed it's very easy to consider music as almost like Netflix. You have a lot of streaming, you can flick. What do you think?
Well, I think young people, if I can make a generalization, love live music, and that's partly a social reason for that. You know, so if you think about big festivals like Glastonbury, or smaller festivals like Festival, or Snape Maltings, or anything at all, I mean, there is a kind of whole social aspect to going to a concert, and they don't just want to sit at home and gaze at a laptop or an iPad in the middle of the night. I mean, obviously you can do that, but I think as human beings, we want to be with one another. It's a sort of ritual that you want to listen to music together. Somebody said to me quite recently that theatre and concerts are the last things that we all do. We all look in the same direction. And actually modern life means that we've been looking in lots of different directions. But the great thing about coming together, it's like a ritual, like going to a church or a temple or a synagogue or something. It's very much part of this communal experience. And I don't think that young people are different in that way, you know. So I think they're going to find a way to come back to the live experience. We already do Spotify, and we've already got Apple Tunes, and we already download things. I mean, that's, you know, that's the same. I think young people are quite adept, aren't they, now, at putting themselves on YouTube, and that's fine. It's very good, and the quality isn't bad, you know, the sound isn't too terrible. That's all fine. I mean, that's a skill to have.
Sure, very interesting. And do you actually think that it will be more younger people coming to the live concerts, because now classical music has become much more available?
Yeah, it's well, I think there are lots of reasons. When we finally open up, whenever that will be, I think possibly the demographic of the audience may have changed, and some older people who will be more alert to their health, they may not be the ones who are so quick to come out, and it'll be the younger ones that will want to come out and start going back to, which is, I think, a very interesting rejuggling of the demographic, particularly in classical music. And I'm not saying for a second that we don't want everybody to come to concerts. It's just that I can imagine that some audiences are going to be slower at wanting to come back. And so it may well be that promoters, because I'm always thinking about this, because I've run festivals and curated series and everything, that you'll start curating for a younger audience, and you will definitely make sure that there's streaming online for your older audience. So suddenly everything goes upside down. You know, it's a sort of the opposite of what we've normally assumed.
Yeah, I agree, and I find it actually very interesting where the classical music will go. In terms of the venues, it's a big hit, I think, on the venues. So do you think venues will stay as they are, or some will shut? Especially classical music, we rely a lot on of course, funding and private donations and the box
Yeah.
income.
Yeah, I mean, I think as ever, you see, when you're in a crisis, the bigger you are, the harder it is, because the smaller places carrying fewer people are going to be quite flexible about this somehow. They're going to be able to duck and weave a bit. And I think if you run a huge orchestral symphonic venue, you've got many hundreds of people on the payroll, which is difficult. Plus, you can't quite work out how you're going to get the requisite number of thousands of people in safely. So the bigger venues are going to find it tougher. And I talk to friends all the time in Europe, because in Europe, they're slightly ahead of us with all of this. I'm talking all the time to friends of mine who are working with venues in Holland and Germany, and all the ways that they're being pretty imaginative, you know, and bringing in perspex and, you know, taping off seats. And, you know, at the Concertgebouw, there was this rumor that they were going to take the entire chamber music series and put that in the big hall. And, you know, there's all kinds of different things that you can do. There's no doubt what you can't do is do the same thing immediately. You can't come out of this and just do the same thing. And that's where the difficulty lies. We've all got to change a bit. And human beings don't like changing very much.
Now, you obviously hold a very senior position at the Royal Academy of Music. How do you motivate your students in this time?
Well, we've all been teaching like crazy online. I'm sure you have as well. And you know how incredibly tiring it is. It's not at all easy. In one way, it's wonderful to see their faces and to hear them speak, and to try and have some kind of form of human warm contact. You know, that's what we're trying to do, is to really try and be encouraging and warm. You know, obviously it's terribly problematic listening to the piano, and we've all been doing this, send me a recording first or put yourself on YouTube first and I'll have a little listen and then we'll talk about things. Also, as I'm sure you've found, a lot of students don't have decent pianos to practice on at home. You know, some of them do, some of the lucky ones do, but a lot of them don't at all have you know, anything resembling a decent piano. So there's quite a lot of frustration there. So what I've been doing with them is talking about all the other things they can do around being a musician. You know, the reading and the imagination and making the 5-year plan and imagining all the repertoire you're going to learn in the next 5 years, curating, sitting down and curating your concert series that you're going to run, you know, all those other things that are part of being a musician. And also just trying to watch a lot of stuff, because effectively when you're a performer, you want to be interesting on stage, don't you? I mean, you need to be a very wildly interesting person. So I was saying to them, please don't worry about this usual, I must practice 7 or 8 hours a day thing, which is what pianists are obsessive about when they're young, because you can't, you know, you're not going to be able to do that. So what you can do is read through some repertoire. So encouraging them to do mad things. Like I've got one student who's learning the whole of the well-tempered clavier at the moment just because she can, you know, I mean, you know, which she would never normally do as a student, but she said, I'm going to do that. I said, that's a great idea. And I've got another student who's, you know, played through both Brahms concertos. He can't practice it properly, but that's what he's doing, is getting to know them from the inside, you know. So you can use it as a time to be hugely ambitious and off the scale, I think.
You have been really I mentioned the role model for me, because you have been doing so many things in your career, so many inspiring things, and being a fantastic performer. So do you think now, as really never, you as a pianist, or actually any musician, need to offer more than just playing the instrument?
Well, that's my core of my teaching anyway. I mean, you know, when I was lucky enough to be offered this job at the Academy, which is a wonderful environment, and the students are marvelous there. I think they're terrific, and I think they've handled this difficult time extremely well. You know, I'm full of admiration for them. But they know this, that the message that I give them all the time as a pianist is, it's not enough to just play the piano well. You know, that's hard enough to play the piano well, but you must have a lot to offer as a musician. You know, you must have an intellect to back it up, research and reading around the, you know, huge amount of curatorial imagination, a great interest in a wide, you know, variety of styles, and the ability to play in a wild variety of styles. You know, the knowledge and the kind of confidence to work with composers and musicians from other genres, because this is what we do now. And the way I say to them is, listen, I'm just telling you to do what Edwin Fisher did. Actually, this isn't new, any of this. There's nothing remotely modern about what I'm saying. This is the way great keyboard players always were. You know, I mean, you've only got to go back to Handel and Bach and just say, look, that is the example of a virtuoso keyboard players. You know, these people are great musicians who make a lot happen around them. So that's what I was always trying to get them to do, on top of, you know, play very well, obviously. So in a way, a time like this gives you time to work on that, but it sort of reminds you actually that if you're going to have a career, you really do need to open the doors up yourself, don't you? I mean, you can't sit around waiting for other people to do it for you.
Sure. Fascinating advice. Just let's move to the other of your professions, conducting. And I'm very excited about this. And especially now, you know, for orchestras, is almost it's the most difficult, I think, time for orchestras, because, you know, instrumentalists, they can play in a duo or trio, not the orchestras. How is it for the Brighton Philharmonic?
Yes, it's very difficult, this. So I've all my life run festivals, and I just stopped running Dartington last summer, which is, you know, a fantastic thing to have done. And then I was asked if I might be interested in becoming the music director of this orchestra, which is 95 years old, and of course they've got a centenary coming up soon. And I thought it might be quite fun, because again, you curate and you run something, but I would be conducting, because I have done conducting with other orchestras like the Britain Sinfonia and the Norwegian Chamber Orchestra and various orchestras, you know. And I thought this would be a very nice thing. And of course, now we've run into this very difficult time. So in fact, I had invented an entire season for them that was opening this October, which was, you know, very exciting season of concerts, and involved me conducting from the keyboard, conducting, bringing in, you know, collaborators and everything. And needless to say, this is all having to be rethought, and quite considerably, because of the problems of large groups of people on stage and backstage. I think one thing it does remind you, as you know, because we're just in the middle of deciding what to do next, it reminds you that orchestras are full of soloists. So you can break down an orchestra into component parts, can't you? So you've got all your principal players and younger players. You can fashion out of a symphony orchestra smaller ensembles, you know, chamber groups, and it may be that we have a year of that, really, where a symphony orchestra shows what it can do in other ways. So that may not be such a bad thing.
It's very interesting. And may I ask you, what is your routine at the moment? I mean, of course, you teach, you practice, you do this. So is there a typical day in your lockdown, the moment?
There isn't really. I've been practicing all the Beethoven sonatas because I'm meant to be doing complete cycles in late September, October and November. And these complete cycles haven't been cancelled yet. And the more I practice for this, the less I think it's likely I'm going to be doing it. But nevertheless, there they are, 32 sonatas sitting there. I've got to, you know, there's the hammer clavier, I better do some practice on it. And so I've had, you know, a lot to think about, you know, a lot of, because apart from anything else, it's quite complicated about how to practice 32 sonatas, you know, how are you going to, because like many pianists, you know, we've all played lots of them, a few we haven't touched, and some we've played a few times. So, I mean, you know, you have to sort of work out, you know, your schedule, how you're going to get all this ready, and how you're going to immerse yourself in all of this. So it's been marvelous from that point of view. So I've each week made a practice plan about all of that, about what I'm doing. obviously I've had teaching to do. I've had a lot of reading to think about. But I think the key thing is, because now it's sort of dragging on a bit, and now I think people are beginning to wilt a bit, aren't they? One of the things probably to do is to make a plan about what you want to do that day. That's one of the things I've been saying to some of these younger people who've done really well at not getting depressed. But if you just wake up and you think, oh, I've had enough of this now, I don't want to do, what am I going to do? I can't do anything. You know, I think it's really important to plan your time and to really have sort of motivate yourself. And I think the other thing as well is getting a bit of exercise really helps. I'm, you know, terribly amused by some of my students who've told me they've been doing press-ups in their tiny rooms. You know, and they've all been doing yoga, watching online, doing online yoga. I mean, it's quite right, because you have to do something, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, now the weather is so much nicer, people are trying to venture out and go for walks and all that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the keys is just to keep mentally and physically motivated, so you don't get depressed and you feel like life is worth living, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and we will all be coming out of this.
Sure. Well, on this positive note, let's finish. And thank you very much for being my guest. And thank you very much for this positivity and creativity. And I'm sure many listeners will appreciate it. So thank you very much. And bye. Thank you.